Alright. Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Liv. Meredith, she, her. I'm an assistant professor at UMass Boston in the counseling psychology program, and I'm a licensed psychologist. And so I work a lot at the intersection of autism and queerness in all different kind of parts of my professional life. And this is a topic I love to talk about and work in this area, and just happy to be here hanging with you. I do, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I've worked with autistic folks since like high school. I got into it pretty early. Yeah, and worked in like a special ed background and really kind of became a psychologist to just continue working with autistic people around social emotional. Just that was really interesting to me. And I worked at some great places in the Boston area that yeah, it just taught me a lot about how to join with folks in respectful ways. And in terms of the queer intersection, when I got to UMass Boston for my master's, I started working with my wonderful mentor who trained me up in doing LGBT health research, and I was just really interested and excited to kind of bridge that with my clinical interest because I was, yeah, kind of seeing queer autistic youth just not have support. People weren't really talking about it, and a lot of yeah, a lot of the kind of ways that we were kind of told and trained to support autistic youth, even like 15, 20 years ago was like pretty heteronormative, pretty rooted in this is how we talk to boys or girls, and this is what you should do. And so I got kind of curious there. And so, yeah, that kind of prompted me on, and I've been really lucky that my career has kind of aligned with people just talking and thinking about autism and the overlap with sexuality and gender and the higher prevalence rates. And so, yeah, and then in terms of, personal identities, I'm a lesbian psychologist and really find it important to just kind of join with community. So that's kind of how I got to this. And it's really cool to get paid to do this every day because it's really interesting to me. Yeah, happy Pride. Yeah, yeah. I think there are aspects of pride that, I've heard folks just speak about queer spaces in general as being sometimes like a sensory nightmare. Thinking about the loud noises and the heat and the crowds and nothing ever seems to be on schedule, which is okay, but can be tricky and kind of stressful to manage. And so I think finding community that fits can be kind of challenging. I think when we think about access to community, there's a lot of diversity within that, within the queer community. And so folks that, we might think, yeah, it's going to be great, might experience just challenges like fitting in with spaces too. And that's come up in some of the research that I've done. And some of my students have been doing work in this area too, of it just can be hard to break in, hard to fit in. And there may be folks that are accepting of my queerness, but maybe less so of how I show up as autistic in these spaces. And so we can see, yeah, some of that stigma within within queer communities and within autistic communities too. So I think, yeah, pride is a lot. It can be really fun. It can be celebratory, and it can be stressful. And yeah, there's a lot, I think, to it. And so I think a lot of the culture revolves around like bars too, and that can be, for some folks that maybe don't drink or don't like the bar scene, that can be another way that can make it tricky to find community. I think the Pride events have continued to grow, and so there's plenty of options. But yeah, the big parties tend to be pretty overwhelming, I think, for anyone.
Certainly, yeah. I just want to check real quick. I just switched my microphone. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, great. I really feel what you're saying with the sensory aspect of things. Um, I feel like that's yeah, like just from being here in the community, I've seen that a lot. Where like it's overwhelming a lot of the time. Like you said, it's a lot, and it would be really nice for folks to be able to go into these very stimulating spaces and be able to participate. Um, but one of the other things that I noticed you said was um, one of the other things that I noticed you said was that you noticed that some folks have a hard time just showing up and being able to be themselves. And
Hmm.
so I wonder if you might comment some more on that. Is that related to the sensory aspect of things, or is it sometimes hard to even just like express your autistic self in a queer space?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that definitely, like, I think I think often assume that it's going to be, or maybe some people may assume that it's going to be, a welcoming and comfortable space. But I think we still have a lot of work to do as a queer community. And it kind of reflects this like larger neurotypical culture a lot of the time, even though we know that there's so many neurodivergent queer folks. So I think even, it kind of breaking in socially can be pretty tricky. And then if you add, other kind of identities on there, that opens you up to kind of risk of additional stigma. And that's a lot of the work that I do is rooted in the minority stress theory. So it kind of thinks about these like chronic, episodic, everyday stressors. And so those on top of what we all experience and things like, am I going to be rejected in this space? Am I going to run into this person that doesn't know I'm queer?
Mm.
Am I going to be misgendered? And so those, I think, can kind of weigh on folks. And then we know that model's been just extended to capture the experience of being autistic in a largely neurotypical world too. So you have folks that are, living at the crux of these multiple identities that are kind of feeling like I'm not fitting in, and that's a different level of exhaustion to be kind of going through that when
Certainly.
you're just trying to participate and have community.
Right. Yeah. No, certainly you're so right. And yeah, it's really quite hard for sure a lot of the time. And so uh forgive me for assuming, but you must have seen some examples of uh neurodivergent friendly queer spaces, and if that is indeed the case, what has that looked like to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think spaces that are beyond just like the activity is like bar or drinking. I think activities that are centered around like queer like fiction. I've been to some great there's a great bookstore in Somerville that all share books. They had like a queer book fest for adults like last June, I believe, and it was awesome. It was like great. It was
Yeah.
quiet. They had like speakers that were kind of local there just so you could kind of go up and talk to, but you could just yeah, browse books in this is kind of queer and um just like fun way. I have friends that have a dog bar that they had like a silent disco party this year for like their 2 year anniversary, and I was commenting like this is awesome. Like it's everyone is kind of yeah having this experience together, but it was really you could take headphones off and you're not having to like scream talk over each other. You're like either headphones off, I'm ready to talk, headphones on, I'm here and I'm just listening and dancing. And so I think spaces like that are important. And yeah, I think when there's spaces for folks to take a break, to have headphones as needed and just like different options, um, being able to like go cool off or just things that again would be helpful for everyone, but they're not always available at events. So those are a couple that come to mind right off the bat.
That's incredible. I love that. And for those who are watching at home, please feel free to mention other neurodivergent friendly queer spaces that you might have participated in or have heard of in the chat. I'd love to make light of those as well. Um, I think that's really awesome. I've also noticed that or actually, maybe you can corroborate this as well. But I find that some spaces that aren't necessarily meant for um, like either to be queer or to be neuroaffirming end up being both, which is
Hmm.
incredible. And the
Yeah.
most shining example I can think of is the game shop, like where you would play D&D or Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
Like the amount of the amount of neurodivergent trans people that love to play Magic is
Mhm.
kind of staggering.
Yeah.
Um, and like I'm sure Wizards of the Coast is thrilled to have us, but I'm also sure they did not set out to find us. So
Yeah.
it's a funny little thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
but in while we're talking about autistic people finding their space, pride is about being able to celebrate who we are, and also to like stand up and claim our identity even in the face of those that might oppress us and oppose us. And so I was wondering if you could comment on how you've seen autistic queer people specifically claim their identities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. So I think the internet is like often a space people go. Are we finished up data collection on a study with my research team, and we were really interested in the experience of how people come to use and know about intersectional labels like neuroqueer, gender, like where where are you finding, terms to describe identity and how are you understanding yourself. And so that has been really interesting because I think, we hear it a lot anecdotally in a lot of the research I've done. People are finding community support online. Maybe they're in an area that there's not a lot of other queer people or autistic people, and so finding, a space that people can get kind of both those identities can be really powerful. So, from what we've seen in this study and other ones is a lot of online spaces. Like I think, we see people on like Tumblr and Instagram and TikTok and Discord and just kind of finding spaces. But having a really, really strong virtual community of folks that are really, supporting, empowering, and invalidating and helping find those labels.
Mhm.
I think that's like been, first and foremost, I think what I've heard from people. And then work by autistic queer people. So like books and blogs and I think like Nick Walker, the neuroqueer heresies is like one that came up pretty much throughout that particular study of that being like so powerful and informative for people just to kind of find that language and then think like, oh wow, I didn't even know, this particular label like was a thing. And now, yeah, that clicks for me. We even had people in that study writing in like, I found out about these labels through this study and like I think that's my experience of I can't pull apart my neurodivergence from my queerness. It's kind of the lens through which I see the world. So yeah, I think language can be powerful for people and affirming, and we see that with both autism and gender and sexuality. And so kind of having it said in the right way that kind of clicks for you is happening a lot in online spaces for people.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. As an autistic trans woman, I resonate with that really, really hard for sure. Especially the part where you said that separating my neurodivergence from my queerness is
Mhm.
virtually impossible.
Mhm.
Personally, I don't use the language that you use, but I do know folks that use it, and it's very helpful for them for sure. Um, but it's so important that that is apparent to people where oftentimes I feel like it is talked about like autism and gender stuff are completely different issues, need to be treated differently, and if one were to be in tune with the research and the community, you might realize that everything informs itself in within one's mind, and you know it creates this beautiful concoction of a person that we all love very much. Um,
Yeah.
and speaking of how we're talked about, um, just a fair warning for folks at home who are listening, I might get a little political, but this ought to be talked about, especially right now, while both autistic people and trans people are facing harmful challenges in the United States. And so, to just get to the point of it, how have you seen the public expression of queer identities and sorry of specifically autistic queer identities change in and out of Trump presidencies? There's obviously been leaders of ours that are well opposed to trans rights and to women and all that stuff, and but I feel like what we're experiencing right now, and probably in his first term as well. I say probably just because I wasn't out then, so I was not paying as well attention. But this seems like the most egregious time for us that a lot of us have lived through. So, in and
Yeah.
out of Trump presidencies, how have you changed? How have you seen autistic queer expression change?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's been really scary for people. I think
Mm-hmm.
we it feels a lot more challenging than the first presidency in a lot of ways. I think the specific attacks, like trans folks have been under attack for a number of years, but we've seen some really great, yeah, some really great strides in the last 4 years prior to this presidency for folks to be accessing healthcare and being able to be visible in sport and and just live. And it's been, I think, really, really scary for people to think about. Yeah, what is this going to mean for me? We know that these bills negatively impact people's health and mental health. We've got almost 600 that have been um, tracked by the ACLU in the US just in 2025. It's really, really high. So we see a lot of the rhetoric has been just really prominent, and people's identities have been quite politicized, and just feeling under attack in all spaces. And so I think, yeah, it's been quite harmful. And even, whether or not some of these bills pass, there's been just like permission given to yeah, to hate and call for threats of like eradicating like autistic trans people, and putting people in really uncomfortable positions to have to choose, can I pursue, you know, an autism diagnosis at this time? Is it safe? What's going to happen? What will happen next with my rights, with my healthcare, with will that make it so that I am unable to access gender affirming healthcare later, right? And it's it's really, really scary. So I think we're kind of moving along in a good space. But it's been really yeah, just really, really upsetting to see the kind of backslide, and the cutting of funding towards, amazing trans health research that has been happening. And I think both autistic and trans folks in particular have worked really, really hard. There's been a lot of advocacy to kind of get to the point we were at, and just to have that stripped, and that progress stalled, that we're going to have to do a lot of rebuilding. But there has been a lot of good good responses. I think people are waking up, which is good. But yeah, it's been, I think, terrifying for people, whether or not their rights are being impacted in this particular moment. Even if the day to day seems okay, it's kind of bracing for what's next, which is really scary.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. I think a great thing to remember is that, like you said, folks are kind of waking up, though. And I'm sure a lot of people who are families and close friends to both autistic people and trans people are realizing just how behind we have been in caring for both of those identities, even
Hmm.
independent of Trump and
Yeah.
crazy Republicans. Are It's becoming more and more apparent that, like, you really need to actually, like, give autistic people, give trans people um the same footing that everybody else gets. And I think it's just, like, it's becoming clear just how disenfranchised we are, especially as it's the attempts to make us even more so are trying to be put through. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously, times like this are very scary, but if there's one thing to be grateful for, it's that our movement does seem to be attracting some people who maybe can help, and, like, and I say maybe, I really should say just attracting people that can help, because the more we
Yeah.
have, the better. That's
Yeah.
just the bottom line, for sure.
Hmm.
But you're right; it is a very scary time right now, for sure, for sure. Um, you were talking about research as well, and how it's also kind of a scary time to be a researcher. because you're working on things that are benefiting a very specific community that the powers that be really would rather not have be researched. So, could you speak from the lens of being a professional and how your work has changed in and out of the administrations?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the conversations that we've had in in recent months, I never expected to have it. As someone that's been just like, yeah, working in this role for about 4 years now. I think to even just have LGBT health, it's still a pretty new, LGBT psychology is still a pretty new as a concept that, we've had to work really, really hard for that. And so, yeah, it feels like backsliding, I think, in a lot of ways, and just really similar, a lot of uncertainty. But I've been really energized by the community of like LGBT researchers kind of coming together and speaking up. But yeah, I think a lot of folks that I know that are doing really wonderful work have lost their funding, had to stop studies that really matter and we're helping people and have the potential to really advance what we know about trans healthcare
Right.
and autism, right? We're trying to move away from these ideas of like curing and fixing and changing. We've had to like really push back against that narrative.
Right.
And so even to have, yeah, folks that are knowing how to look for research that is respectful and centering the, preferences of the autistic community. That has taken a really long time to get to that point. And so there are still some really great spaces funding this work, but yeah, there's also other narratives out there of this is something we should kind of go back to studying. So keeping it community focused is something that's important to me. But yeah, it's been a really weird time to study these areas. And I was teaching an LGBT theories course this semester, and each construct that we talked about it just kept kind of cycling with the news that each week it became very draining and hard to talk about, and it was really yeah, it like weighed, I think, on all of us to. But also, it was like, wonderful to be able to have the space to talk about, what can we do to support LGBT folks right now? What can we do to support autistic LGBT folks? And be able to train professionals to provide care that is affirming of both those identities. So it's been a pretty mixed bag, I would say, but also I've been energized, I think, by like some of the work that I'm doing with collaborators and students.
Hmm.
Yeah, feeling very committed to it.
That's great for sure. I love that. Um, and I know that you're part of. I know that you're doing so much great work right now, and I know that at least one of your studies is fortunately privately funded, and so it's able to keep going. Um,
Yeah.
and this is my loose segue into talking about some research that you and I happen to be involved in
Yeah,
together.
let's do it.
Um, and I was wondering if you might talk about that a little bit, just because I think it's important for folks to know that
Mhm.
despite funding being taken away for lots of really good and important work, which is terrible and tragic, that it is still happening to the best of our ability. Because just because no, you shouldn't do that. We don't want to give money to you. Just because those notions are in the air does not mean we stop doing the work that we have set out to do to better our community. So, what are we doing together to further this stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So yes, we have some like foundation funding through the Organization for Autism Research, who have been just really wonderful at supporting trans autistic research. Yeah, so that's been wonderful that we have been able to continue this work. We are doing a really cool study that I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So we are studying basically the experiences people have attending LGBT autistic support groups. And these are virtual, online through A&E. You can probably give a bit of a more detailed plug given your experience. But we're wanting to know what's that experience like for people? What are they finding from these groups? How are they feeling about them? What are they getting out of them? What keeps them coming back for more? Because the number of groups is amazing, and it's just grown in recent years.
Mhm.
Do you want to say more about the groups?
Yeah, absolutely. So our groups that we offer here at AANE are, every group that we offer is for autistic people, and then we offer lots of them that are specific to different co-occurring identities. So like there are groups for young men on the spectrum, or like autistic folks of certain age groups, and then we have ones for all sorts of different queer identities. We have gender groups in particular. We have just like a standard queer social group where no matter what flavor of queer you are, you get to come and schmooze and just be in community and share strategies for existing and all that stuff. And what I find folks get the most benefit from, or sorry, I'm going to rephrase that sentence. How I find folks benefit the most from these groups is through being able to talk about stuff that they largely can't with other people. You know,
Mhm.
as many of us are there are many of us who are autistic and queer in some fashion. Despite that, sometimes it can be hard to find a community. And so, like you mentioned earlier, with online spaces,
Yeah.
these are a place where folks can come to deliberately talk about these things. And the facilitators for our groups are also queer autistic people. So, we are professionals as well as community members, and we're very happy to foster such environments. And
Mhm.
are we still taking recruits right now? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, if you would like to be a part of the study that Meredith and I are doing, we are still taking folks who might want to talk about their experience having been in an AA&E group before. So, if you haven't been in a group before, I'd recommend trying one. And if you have a time, whether it's good or bad, then you might consider linking up for our study. Um, if you would like to browse any of those groups, you go to aane.org/events and you can browse from there.
Mhm.
Thank you for listening to my plug. And but I'm really
That's
glad we get to do this, like because
yeah.
this, like you said, this work is like it's really important that we still do it. And I commend you because I remember a conversation we had some weeks ago where you described like your plans for what research you'd like to do next. And to me, the theme of it all seemed to be centered around making autism care just so much more queer friendly and gender affirming,
Yeah.
which I thought was excellent. And I hope that I'm representing your ideas and your work well. So feel free to elaborate on that, however. But I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Liv. I think yeah, that's sort of the theme is trying to make like, mental health care in particular, in a more holistic way, right? Thinking about community care and well-being just broadly better. Because you said it really well earlier on that we have these silos, right? And things that were thought as totally separate. And so we see the same silos professionally, right? In spaces where folks just didn't get the training. Maybe they got training in autism or training in gender, but folks at the intersection that's been growing as an area. So that's like some of the work that I get excited about and also want to join like with community to do that work. And I think that's what feels really exciting about even this study because it's an intervention that is running right now and the community has access to it. It's not researcher developing an intervention and coming in and saying, I know what's best for the community. So this is something that's already happening, and being able to kind of showcase how it's working and how it's impacting people feels really just exciting. I think research can help legitimize experiences that the community knows about and has been happening for a while, but this can get the knowledge out to professionals a little bit more and kind of show the impact. So yeah, that's a lot of the work that I do is more clinically focused or applied, and yeah, I think changes
Hmm.
the I don't know the feel of it when
Yeah,
it's less top down.
that's great. I really love that. Um, I feel so fortunate that this research is happening, and even more so that I get to be involved. Um, if you were to give a recommendation for how other autistic queer folks can be involved in research about us, um,
Mhm.
what would you recommend? And if you also could maybe give us a picture of how that's changed over time, like how we've gotten to be involved in our own research, I'd appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, yeah. That's so important. So I mean, a lot of the like past research about autism, and about trans folks too, there's a lot of parallels, but was really harmful, and it perpetuated a lot of stereotypes and stigma about like autistic people don't have empathy, which we know is not true. And so there's been a lot of work just looking into, again, like we need to change, fix, return to the norm. And it was, conducted by largely not autistic people, and studying things that, yeah, others thought this is what the autistic community needs, or this is what we need, and we feel uncomfortable, and so we wanna change you to fit our kind of standard of what's normal, normal, right? It's but we've seen this really great shift, and there's been more involvement by autistic people who are conducting work, independently in collaboration, and there's different levels and ways to get involved, but we um, can study things that matter to people. And a lot of autistic folks actually prefer like to do research knowing that other autistic folks have been informed. We can make the questions more accessible. We can study topics that are important to the community. And so we're not just, again, guessing or kind of perpetuating harm. So there's some great work around like community engaged research or community based participatory action research. And that's been, a space for other identities and backgrounds of people that have been historically excluded from doing research. But there's great ways to involve and kind of join with at different levels, and compensating people and being transparent about what you can offer. But it just, I think it makes the research so much better. Like I might think I'm asking a question one way, and that's not how it's going to be received, right? And so we're able to sort of like translate and really think about it as having like a neurodiverse perspective on it. And so having, I think, a combination of like neurotypical and neurodivergent and autistic folks and all together doing the work changes it. When if it's just a group of neurotypical folks, it can miss, a piece of the picture, like a pretty big piece. So I think ways to get involved. There's a lot of, folks that might advertise like advisory board experiences or co-researcher experiences. I've had people just email me and say, "Hey, can I get involved in research?" And so that can sometimes, yeah, that can sometimes be a way. But there's different levels to it. Like our study that we kind of did together, we thought about it and first, you know, applied for funding. It was like years ago at this point. And so that is like a great way to get folks involved from the start and from the idea versus kind of pulling them in later. But there can also be like really great impacts and yeah, having people join in different ways and provide consultation or do interviews or do analysis. And I think it really makes it a lot better.
Totally.
And then it gives people access to, yeah, information about themselves and community. And yeah, I really enjoy doing it.
For sure. Me too. Um, and it just goes to show like the notion that we all subscribe to and continue to what's the word I'm looking for, profess, which is nothing about us without us, baby.
Exactly.
uh, it turns out without us, a lot of misinformation gets spread,
Yeah.
so get involved. um, and whatever way that, for folks listening back home, whatever way that you can find a way to do that, whatever capacity you have is incredible and perfect, and you know, whatever you have, we could use for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, that's about the end of my questions for you. Did you have anything else you wanted to say to our folks?
Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting,
Yeah,
this wonderful person that I get to hang out with a lot, but it's been fun getting to chat with you in this space.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, you're gonna make me blush. But no, thank you very much. I very much appreciate you being here and having this talk. Um, and I greatly look forward to the more research that we get to do. And I'm going to brag to our audience for a little bit. We're presenting at the American Psychological Association conference in Denver this
Yeah.
year. So exciting and good. So I'm really excited to do that. And I don't know about you, Meredith, but one of the I'm using that trip as an affirmation that despite their best efforts, we are
Mhm.
still being celebrated for the work that we're doing, and
Yeah.
our community is, strong and active.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it'll be just really important to, yeah, keep doing this work. And yeah, I think the timing of it, we submitted this in like January or so. And so it was
Yeah.
really, encouraging to get a space to just share this really important work and know that there are a lot of people that do care about this and want to, learn how to better support
Totally.
autistic queer folks. So yeah, it's going to be really great. I'm glad you're presenting.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody very much. I really appreciate y'all being here tonight and listening to this talk. Meredith, thank you for being here tonight and having this really important talk with me. I very much enjoyed getting to go over all of it. And so, one more time, since we are here at the AANE live stream, AANE is an organization that provides services to autistic folks, their families, and the friends and folks and professionals that support them. Click the link to learn more. I've been Liv. I've been with Dr. Maroney. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and we are off. Okay.